It's gotta be crazy. You learn more fundamentals.
I wear 53 because that's what my dad wore.
So I'm sure you love Darryl Dawkins.
The night Darryl Dawkins shattered his first NBA backboard. November 13, 1979, Kansas City, a regular season game against the Kings. The arena went still for a moment nobody in the building had a script for. Glass rained down onto the hardwood. The rim was gone, and the man who did it stood there, arms wide, completely unbothered. But what if the most interesting thing about Darryl Dawkins wasn't what he could destroy, but what he loved? Because when you get Chocolate Thunder talking about the players who moved him, his childhood idols, his teammates, the opponents who genuinely gave him problems, a different picture emerges. Not just a wrecking ball, but a basketball mind. A passionate fan trapped inside the body of the most physically intimidating center of his era. In interviews in his autobiography, and in a Reddit AMA conducted just 14 months before he passed away in August 2015, Dawkins said exactly who he admired and why. Pull those answers together and a list takes shape. Not a formal ranking he ever published, but something more valuable. A window into how one of the NBA's great characters actually saw the game he spent his entire life in. 10 players, Dawkins' words, wherever possible. Starting at number 10, with a detail that tells you something essential about the man. Dawkins once said that his favorite nickname in all of basketball wasn't one of his own. He had dozens: Chocolate Thunder, Sir Slam, Zandokan, the Mad Dunker, Pure Pleasure, Double D. But the one that kept coming back as his personal favorite, Iceman, George Gervin's nickname. That single detail says something real. Gervin was everything. Dawkins wasn't on a basketball court in terms of style, fluid, impossibly smooth, a scorer who worked in ranges and registers that Dawkins simply wasn't built for. 4 NBA scoring titles. A way of playing that made physicality seem optional, because finesse alone was enough. For a man who made his name by breaking structures and forcing the world to accommodate his power, there was genuine appreciation in the way Dawkins kept returning to that name. A bruiser who knocked down backboards, giving his highest nickname praise to the most elegant scorer of his era. Number 9 on this list came from a different conversation, one where Dawkins was asked which modern players represented what he believed basketball should be. He pointed to Kevin Garnett first. Dawkins described Garnett alongside Allen Iverson, Paul Pierce, and Tracy McGrady as players who had heart, who shook and baked and talked trash and took the last shot when it mattered. But Garnett was at the front of that group in Dawkins' mind. The intensity, the versatility, the fact that KG treated every possession like it personally offended him. I like KG, Dawkins said plainly. From a man who measured everyone by their willingness to compete at full force. That was a genuine endorsement. Number 8 is the entry where Dawkins looked at a player and essentially said, "That's me. Shaq and Barkley remind me of me. They don't care who you are, they try to dunk on you." Shaquille O'Neal made this list not because of his 4 championships or his 3 Finals MVP awards, though those were real. He made it because he played with the same total disregard for the emotional state of anyone standing between him and the basket. Dawkins had pioneered that approach in the late 70s and early 80s. Shaq carried it forward into a new era and validated it on the biggest stages the sport offered. For Dawkins, watching Shaq was like watching a continuation of something he'd started. The same philosophy, the same refusal to make it easy for anyone who came close. Number 7 requires stepping back to 1975, when Dawkins was a teenager finding his legs in a league full of veterans who had no patience for rookies regardless of how athletic those rookies were. World B. Free was drafted that same year, 23rd overall, to the same Philadelphia team. Flashy, supremely confident, a scorer who averaged over 20 points per game across his career, and who at one point legally changed his name to World B, Free, because nothing else quite captured what he was. Dawkins named Free as one of his 2 closest friends in the entire NBA, alongside Earl Curitin. That's a different kind of endorsement than basketball admiration. That's a man saying another man mattered to him where it actually counted. And Dawkins didn't make that distinction carelessly. For number 6, Dawkins went back further, to a childhood that hadn't yet included professional basketball, to the players who made a kid from Orlando dream about what the NBA could be. "I like Jerry West too," he said, placing West in the same breath as the 2 players at the very top of his all-time inspirations. That context matters. West was the logo before anyone called him that. A guard who turned clutch moments into a personal signature, whose scoring precision and playoff performances defined what a competitor looked like at the highest level. Dawkins was a power center who deeply appreciated what a great guard could do when everything was on the line. West showed him the blueprint, and Dawkins never forgot it. Number 5 on the list was another player from that same era of inspirations, someone Dawkins respected enormously, even while placing him slightly behind his ultimate idol. Oscar Robertson averaged a triple-double for the entire 1961-62 season. 30 points, 12 rebounds, 11 assists. Every single night, in an era when the triple-double wasn't even a concept people bothered tracking. Dawkins named Robertson directly and named him warmly, placing him among the players he admired most growing up. He was also clear he was a bigger fan of one other player, but Robertson still earns this spot because when Chocolate Thunder said he liked you, he meant it as a serious statement about how he saw basketball's history. Number 4 is where Dawkins got personal in a very specific way. Not about admiration from a distance, but about a man who made him feel genuinely outmatched. Bob Lanier, 6'11", size 22 shoes. Career averages of 20 points and 10 rebounds per game across a Hall of Fame career that ended without a finals appearance. A gap between talent and championship that mirrors Dawkins' own story in uncomfortable ways. But the reason Lanier earns this spot is simpler than any of that. 22 shoe, left hand. I couldn't guard him no matter what. That's Dawkins on the best player he ever competed against, unfiltered and precise. The honesty of it is striking from a man who spent his career physically intimidating everyone who came near him. Lanier was the exception, the player who showed Darryl Dawkins what it felt like to have no answer, and Dawkins said so without any softening. That kind of respect doesn't fade, and it doesn't need embellishment. Number 3 is where Dawkins genuinely surprised people, and it's worth slowing down, because most fans would have gotten this wrong. Ask anyone who Darryl Dawkins' favorite teammate was, and the obvious answer is Julius Erving. The Doctor, his co-star in Philadelphia for 6 seasons, 3 finals runs together. Some of the most electrifying basketball the Eastern Conference produced in that era. But when Dawkins was asked directly in his 2014 Reddit AMA, point blank, who was your favorite teammate, he didn't hesitate. Bobby Jones. My favorite teammate would have had to been Bobby Jones, Dawkins said. And then in his book he went further. I love Bobby Jones. He was the best guy I have ever met in the NBA. Nobody's game was more unselfish than his. Jones was the Sixers' defensive cornerstone, 8 all-defensive first-team selections, the 1983 Sixth Man of the Year, and a championship ring from that same 1983 season. The year that came 1 season after Dawkins had been traded away to New Jersey. Dawkins missed the title his old team finally won. He never carried bitterness about that publicly, and the best proof of it is this. Even after everything, even after missing the moment he'd worked toward for 7 years in Philadelphia, Dawkins still called Bobby Jones the best man he'd ever met in professional basketball. That's Number 2 requires only 4 words to explain. He was a leader man, Julius Erving, Dr. J. Dawkins played beside him for 6 years in Philadelphia, from 1976 through 1982. 3 finals trips together. The 1977 loss to Portland. The 1980 loss to the Lakers. The 1982 loss to the Lakers again. All of that effort, all of those deep playoff runs. And when Dawkins talked about Erving, what came through wasn't frustration at what they hadn't won together. It was genuine reverence for what Erving was as a player and a presence. Erving gave the Sixers their identity, gave Dawkins a daily model for what professionalism looked like at the absolute summit of the sport. He won his championship in 1983, after Dawkins was gone, and Dawkins spoke about that without bitterness. Only pride in what they'd built. Which brings us to number 1. And there was never any real competition for this spot. I like Oscar Robertson, but I was a bigger fan of Wilt Chamberlain, and I liked Jerry West too. But Wilt Chamberlain, there was no other like him. Dawkins said those words and meant every syllable. Wilt Chamberlain averaged 30 points and 22 rebounds per game across his entire career. He averaged 50 points per game for a full season, the same 1961-62 campaign that also featured Robertson's historic triple-double average, a year in basketball that simply defied comprehension. He scored 100 points in a single game. He won 2 championships, 4 MVP awards, and set statistical records that remain standing, not because the sport hasn't found players talented enough to approach them, but because the distances involved are simply too vast. For Darryl Dawkins, who came into the NBA as the first player ever drafted directly out of high school, who shattered 2 backboards in a single season and forced the league to redesign its equipment, who spent his career trying to impose his physical will on a sport that kept adjusting its rules around him. Wilt was the original. The proof that a center could be so overwhelming that the game itself bent around his presence. The man who showed that what Dawkins was trying to be was not only possible, but had already been done at levels that defied reasonable description. There was no other like him. Coming from a player who was himself genuinely one of a kind, that sentence carries everything. Darryl Dawkins died on August 27, 2015, at 58 years old, in Allentown, Pennsylvania. The tributes that followed celebrated the dunks, the broken backboards, the nicknames, the mythology he'd built around himself with such obvious and contagious joy. All of it was real, and all of it deserved every word written about it. But so did this. The fact that Chocolate Thunder was underneath all the showmanship and the planet Lovatron mythology, and the falling glass. A man who loved basketball and the players who made it extraordinary. He watched Wilt as a kid and felt something clarify in him about what the sport could be. He played beside Irving and Bobby Jones and World B. Free, and understood what it meant to be surrounded by players who were each great in different ways. He competed against Bob Lanier and felt the specific humility that only a truly great opponent can produce. He watched Garnett and Shaq and felt proud that the game was still delivering players who brought that same kind of force. The glass fell. The rims bent. The legend grew with every year that passed. And Darryl Dawkins, through all of it, was just a man who loved basketball, and who made sure that the players he loved most knew exactly how he felt.